think that groups of people who have been oppressed think they have the monopoly on oppression, right? So it's kind of like, I've been so oppressed, and therefore you really can't hear anything else that's going on. My issue must be addressed. Not saying that your issue, quote unquote, is being linked up with other issues.
I grew up poor, working class, and I'm not one of those folks who sort of knew as a young person that I was queer. I mean, I knew I was different, but every time I tried to find a way to be a part of a community, a queer community, and I noticed how much I changed by finding community and sort of connecting to community as opposed to knowing individually. I kept coming up against class, and for me it was mostly about class experience. And I kept coming across moments in which class and economic justice were not recognized, and as a result, people were making an awful lot of decisions about the room that denied class and economic justice.
Gay identity has been sort of historically defined through the experience of kind of urban gay white men. So, kind of women don't exactly fit into the mold, and it all sort of revolves around the coming out story, and kind of being out means that you're out at every moment of the day, and if at any moment of the day there's someone who doesn't know that you are a gay person, that somehow you are not sort of fully out. And I always just sort of thought, like, I grew up in a different culture, and I didn't sort of relate to the Speech Act as necessarily what defines a person.
A lot of issues are being surfaced around race and class, and the fact that sexuality or gender is being left out of it is a disappointment. And we don't want to look back in history and say, oh, we forgot about this. And I think it just needs to be included, and it just needs to be a conversation again. And I'm pretty sure that people are having conversations, but again, it is done in these very kind of segregated ways, or it's done so where that becomes the issue, just sex or sexuality and gender, and not included race or class within that.
I can give examples of times when I've been in, for example, queer, I would say gay and lesbian, they're not really queer, family moments or family organizing, where most of the narrative about what it means to have children has made a lot of assumptions about middle and upper middle class folks. So, for example, I went to a workshop that was about the economics of raising children. I was pregnant. I thought I was going to learn how much money does it really take to have a kid, how much do diapers cost, or what happens if you want to do these, recycled diaper stuff, or you want to do cloth diapers. How much does it cost? And it was a session that was very much about investing. If you want your child to go to college, here's what you start doing right away. And that assumption of middle classness and upper middle classness has happened again and again and again, and if anything, more rapidly as we've moved from the roots of what was then gay and lesbian, or what was actually initially gay movement stuff, which was grounded out of the civil rights movement, out of the anti-Vietnam War, out of an analysis of empire, into more something that was about individual rights.
The left is a collection of little movements, and there's been a loss of identity of a broader movement, where in the 60s you were part of the movement and you might have worked in a different area of it. Now it's more like I'm in the queer movement, or I'm in, this movement or that movement.
My friends, or some of my friends who are gay, one in particular, and he doesn't divorce himself. He can't divorce himself for what it means to be black, male, gay, from a working class background in America. All that is part of his identity. So sometimes I think that we like to divorce ourselves, or think that we can divorce ourselves from those things. And we can't, I can't divorce myself from being a woman, like I can't divorce myself from being black. I am a black woman. I'm both of those things, all at the same time. Why can't those groups come together and say, hey, we're all in this?
I believe that every part of my life informs where I am right now. Coming from a Baptist church, coming from an African-American family, coming from a school where my sister and I and two other kids were the only African-American students in the school. And And coming from a place of being the only out person in my family, but there are a lot of GLBT people in my family, and having to kind of represent that entire group and still stand and be strong and all of that, and to get to a place where I couldn't stand anymore and I felt defeated, and I believed all the lies that I was told about how I wasn't good enough and that how I shouldn't have existed, and I believed those things and allowed those things to throw me into a depression, and I tried to commit suicide from that depression.
I feel very blessed by the opportunity to be out. Not many of my brothers or sisters can be out for a variety of reasons. And since I am able to be out, I feel I have an obligation to do the best with that I possibly can. And part of what I do with that is I want people to see me as a transgender person. Within the trans community, there's a lot of attention paid to the idea of passing, the idea of being able to be out in public and nobody will be able to identify that you are a transgender person.
And coming out on the other side of that and realizing that I was powerful and I was loved and I was accepted and that God did embrace who I was, that helped me then go to that next level in my life and say, wait a minute, I've been living too long, allowing too many people to influence who I am, when the only person, the only, opinion that matters is mine next to God's. And so then it became about being honest with who I am and not feeling that I had to not say that I was a lesbian or not say that I was a Christian. And it became about being honest. And when I met my spouse, Dana, that helped me live first and foremost as honest as I possibly could, because as much as everyone wanted me to introduce her as my friend, this is my wife, and finding a church that I could do that in was an incredible gift for me.
I see myself as a feminist. And I know a lot of women do also identify themselves as a womanist. I strongly feel as a woman that I use the word feminist to reclaim it. And also because I see how uncomfortable it makes people feel when they see a Muslim woman in hijab as a feminist, how they identify themselves as a feminist. And that feeling of uncomfortable, I feel, is a gift to them, of them trying to dismantle some of the oppression that they have inside of them. And so that's why I keep using it.
The fact is, I want people to see me as transgender. That's one of the reasons I dress as, some people say outlandish. I don't think it's outlandish, but with high style, I try to present myself in a way that will bring people's attention to me. I want them to see me, and then if they see me as a woman, that's fine. If they see me as a transgender woman, that's fine too. And if they want to talk about that, then I've done what I really want to do.
Finding my call from God and seeing that there were many places for me to go and share who I am and have that inspire someone else who was possibly going to kill themselves or who wasn't comfortable with their relationship because they knew that no one else was comfortable with it. Telling that story for me, as many times as I do, it never gets old, because it's always the fact of, even if I help one person, that means the world to me. And knowing that me helping one person could possibly save a life or bring someone into relationship with God, that's what I'm here to do. That's my job. And so getting to do my job is the most wonderful gift that I could ever do.
One of the occasions where we had a real challenge to the coalition was when the far right was pushing a constitutional amendment in the state of Minnesota that would limit marriage to one man and one woman. it basically was an affront to gay, lesbian couples and a so-called gay marriage amendment, or the anti-marriage amendment.
The right wing, whether it's gay marriage or immigrants or whatever, has been able to focus attention on a group. And meanwhile, all these horrible things are happening to working people.
One of my strong supporters among black preachers said to me, Keith, why are you opposing this marriage amendment? As you know, there's all these black families where the couple isn't married and women are raising kids and not in single family homes. And shouldn't you be standing up for marriage?
We've seen in state after state that when this thing gets on the ballot, it energizes a right-wing Republican base to come out, and that everyone hurts in the end.
I sat down with my friend and I said to him, look, you and I may never agree on this, or maybe one day we will. But you can't tell me that these people who are pushing this so-called marriage amendment are in favor of civil rights or are even in favor of marriage.
Even though it had not been an issue that we had worked on, there was a large enough outcry in the Jewish community that this was terrible policy, and that it wasn't so much about whether or not, the debate wasn't so much about whether we should get a law passed allowing marriage. It was whether or not we should change the Constitution to ban it permanently.
I don't know if I got him to agree with my position 100%, but I did get him to agree that it was good and it was right and it was just for me as a legislator to take the position I was taking. And a few months after that, he told me that his ministry was going to start trying to focus more on HIV/AIDS outreach and more on accepting everyone and more on having some respect for the fact that we don't know all that is in God's mind.
We were part of lobbying legislators, and we felt some degree of success as being part of this very broad-based coalition that succeeded in killing the amendment.
I was at the Muslim American Society convention, and I was actually at my Girl Scout booth, and I had two of my Girl Scouts there with me. And these parents came up to me, both of them were mothers, and they had their little Girl Scout girls as well with them. And we were talking about Girl Scouts and everything was fine. And then they realized that they recognized me from when I had ran for mayor and that I was running for state representative. And they switched gears and they'd ask me questions about, well, Keith Ellison's a big supporter of the Human Rights Campaign, and we're not really happy about that. We don't like the Human Rights Campaign. We don't like their curriculum on welcoming schools. How do you feel about the Human Rights Campaign? And I said, well, I actually don't like the Human Rights Campaign, but because they sold out the transgender community on Edna, and that went completely over their head. They had no idea what I was talking about. And then it was even worse, as I said, well, I do believe in fighting for LGBT rights.
I was in this class where we're in a discussion, and a lot of the discussion is about God and how we identify God to be. Now, I was the only person of color and the only woman in the class. And I'm assuming the only queer person in the class too. And a couple of the men were speaking, and they were talking about how we can find God within each other and God within the things around us. And so I listened for a while, and I said, so basically, you're saying that if we are a part of God and God is a part of us, that we're somehow equal to God in some way. And taking into account the fact that God made us in His image and that we have the creative power that God also has, are you suggesting that we're equal? And just the whole room was just completely floored that I would suggest that we are somehow equal to God. And I thought, but that's what you said.
I actually challenged those two women at the convention about this. Is this really an issue of something that's against Islam, or is this really an issue about you being uncomfortable? Because if this is an issue about something that's against Islam, then we can have a nice, healthy debate and understanding. But if this is an issue about you just feeling uncomfortable, then this is your issue. This is you who needs to go to a therapist and talk it out. I'm not going to sit here and try to make you feel comfortable about something.
And then I realized if I would have been a man, even perhaps a man of color, having said the same thing, it would have been received much better. And so I had a guy after class pull me aside and he said, I understood what you were saying. I completely agree with you. And I said, well, why couldn't you mention that, you know, in the larger discussion? And then that's when I got it, like, okay, I'm speaking representing an entire community that should not have a voice. And then those people who want to align themselves with me can't be known. And I thought, that's weird. That's really weird, especially because we're in the business of learning how to help people and learning how to comfort people and educate people about the ways of God. At first it started to feel like a burden, and then moments like that allowed me to see, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm doing here. These are things that I'll be able to use to get me stronger, to help dismantle this system.
I felt really strongly that I needed to not back down. I felt very strongly that I needed to be very upfront and state exactly how I felt and why I felt what I felt. I felt that I was being a role model to my Girl Scouts, and even though I know that they aren't comfortable with my opinions as well, I strongly believe that if I was going to tell them that they have to stand up for what they believe in and be strong in their convictions, I had to do the same thing in front of them.
It became about going to the source so that I could understand that source from within, so that when I am at a period in my life where I am able to actually enforce some kind of change, that I have the knowledge of what that system is like, and I can actually say, well, from experience, I've been there. I know what the system is, and I know about the male domination. I know about, you know, the issues regarding homosexuality, and I know about how, you know, women are treated and all of that. And so to be on the outside, I would not be able to have that privilege to say that I had the experience of knowing how to dismantle that system from the inside out. You know, so, and a lot of people think I'm crazy for actually having gone there, but for me, it's been a wonderful experience. Wonderful experience.
I was working for an organization that was working on reproductive health and sexuality education issues. And this organization, it was a predominantly white organization that also had kind of a contingent that was working within the Black church. And I'd worked for this organization for maybe a year and a half, and then was asked to be the executive director. And the Black church and kind of the more kind of interfaith, kind of white facet of this organization really did not have much communication. It was kind of like, well, we'll just trust each other to do our work well.
One of the members who came to Spirit of the Lakes was Gail, and Gail was a trans woman who I'm not even sure how many years ago this was now, probably about 9 years. Went home on a Sunday.